Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Meaningful Motivations with Tracy Erickson. And of course, if you are new to this channel, welcome. My name is Tracy Erickson. And in this video, I am going to discuss what causes childhood trauma and how we can actually heal from that childhood trauma as adults. So stay tuned. Childhood trauma affects a huge portion of the population. In fact, I'm sure that all of us have had some form of childhood trauma at some point in our childhood, whether or not we, actually remember the event. In a Google search that I conducted, I learned that 2/3 of American children experience a potentially traumatic event by the age of 16. And also, 1 in 7 American children experience abuse or neglect. While so many of us have experienced some type of traumatic event at some point in our childhood, the thing is with childhood trauma is that it can manifest in adulthood in different negative and self-sabotaging ways, such as manifesting as depression, anxiety, regret, anger, or rage. So many of the mental health problems that people are experiencing could actually be caused by some traumatic childhood event or just a traumatic childhood in general. Childhood trauma isn't necessarily easy to identify sometimes. For me, for instance, it was quite traumatic in my childhood when my father was an alcoholic, because he would be verbally abusive to my mother and physically abusive to my brother. And he would do all of this in front of me. So for me, that is something that you can definitely identify as a traumatic experience. Because of different levels of my own childhood trauma, I carried a lot of my father's rage with me throughout my teens and my early 20s. Honestly, in that time of my life, I was living more in like a victim mentality. I just felt like things weren't going my way, but all of that was just totally out of my control. It reminded me of the William Shakespeare quote. What is it? It's like the sins of the father are passed down to the child. That's really how I felt about the hand that I was dealt. So childhood trauma doesn't have to be that dramatic either, because sometimes it's just something someone says to you that sticks with you longer than it should, because it really, really made you feel something. And sometimes it's these negative voices that we hear repeated to us over and over throughout our entire lives, almost like these thoughts, these self-sabotaging thoughts are on autopilot. Through meditation and self-reflection, I learned so much about myself. Mostly that when someone is feeling victimized, they usually become the victimizer. You've heard that quote or saying before that hurt people hurt people. And it really is true, even though it sounds so cheesy and overused. It is absolutely true that we take what has been put on us and we give it to others, right? So whatever it is that we have focused on and what we have turned into a part of ourselves is what we have to offer to the people around us. Our childhood traumas can also hold us down in this self-sabotaging pattern by coming out as traits that we've taken on through that trauma as a form of self-protection. But really, all of that is not protection. It is self-sabotage. So for example, someone I knew a long time ago who I was actually in love with at one time was someone who was adopted in this life. And Although he was adopted, his adoptive mother also passed away when he was very young. So in the end, he was raised by his emotionally unavailable father. And later as an adult, it made it so that he was emotionally unavailable. And it was actually a self-sabotaging thing that took place in our relationship that eventually just made it deteriorate and crumble and fall away. So it's like whether he was aware of it or not, it was his own internal struggle with feeling valued and loved unconditionally by a mother figure or even a father figure, I'm sure. So it was that unconscious feeling of not feeling loved that he was then, putting out into the world and therefore sabotaging his own relationships and his own happiness in the end. So now that you kind of have an idea of what I mean by childhood trauma and how that trauma can manifest in our adult lives, now I would like to speak about how to heal from this childhood trauma. Step 1 in healing from your childhood trauma is to simply take personal responsibility for your own life and your own choices and the part that you have played in creating the current reality that you are living in. That's right. Personal responsibility and free will is what it's all about. So to heal from childhood trauma, it's important to remove yourself from the part of being the victim. So it's time to understand that hurt people hurt people. Therefore, the person who victimized you is also a victim in their own right. So gaining a level of understanding that we are all human and we're all at our own level of development and understanding is a good first step in taking this personal responsibility, because it can take some of the weight off of you. This idea of personal responsibility is quite different from the William Shakespeare quote that I quoted earlier about the sins of the father being passed down to the child. This idea of personal responsibility is quite the opposite. Personal responsibility is what will give you freedom from your childhood trauma. I turned to the Bible to get some insight on this, and so I found chapter 18 of Ezekiel to be very helpful. Only the one who sins shall die. The son shall not be charged with the guilt of his father, nor shall the father be charged with the guilt of his son. The virtuous man's virtue shall be his own, as the wicked man's wickedness shall be his. So to sin is to be aligned with the lower vibrations on the map of consciousness. So when you are sinning or going against God's virtue or what the Lord, your own I am, your own highest version of yourself wants you to be, when you go against that, then you're living in these lower vibrational energies. You're living more in regret, shame, guilt, fear, anger, and all of these things that are not aligned with a good and happy life. If you live with virtue and you do with your own personal responsibility what is good and right for yourself and for others, that is when you will surely have life. And what is really meant by that is you're going to be aligned with the higher vibrational energies. You're going to be more aligned with power. You're going to attract more good into your life. And eventually, you might even reach the pinnacle of this map of consciousness, which is enlightenment and basically full oneness with all of mankind, simply by living virtuously with your own free will. And my second tip for healing from childhood trauma would be to find a way to reach a certain level of mental stillness. For me, it was finding the School of Metaphysics and learning how to still my mind in meditation and prayer. And for some others, it might be taking a yoga class, or it could be taking a walk in nature every day. Basically, to come to a level of stillness in mind that can put you in the present now moment, at least for a little bit in each of your days. Because the more that you can bring your mind to this level of stillness, the more balance you begin to experience in your thinking, which leads to more balance in your emotions, which leads to more balance in your outer world too. And I'm saying this because I know it from direct personal experience. I did carry my father's rage through my teens and early 20s, but when I learned to still my mind, it changed everything. And it also made me realize that a lot of the feelings I was feeling were actually coming from other people. So I was able to kind of have more discernment over what I was going to allow to affect me, my thinking, and my feelings. My third tip to heal your childhood trauma is to actually experience forgiveness for the person or the people or the group of people that hurt you in the past. Remember that people who hurt people are actually hurt themselves. So it takes a certain level of understanding to come to a sense of forgiveness, no matter what has happened to you. And I know it can be hard, but it can be done. And to forgive someone, it doesn't mean that you have to allow that person back into your life experience. You forgive someone for you, not for them. And I know that sounds so backwards to some people who are living in the lower vibrations, but trust me, when you can actually offer understanding in the face of this, you are going to feel better yourself, and it's going to improve your life by tons and tons just by practicing forgiveness for the people who have hurt you in the past. This is also reminding me of a quote from my Notes from Heaven. And that quote is that it actually takes courage to be human. So remember, from your soul's perspective, we are all one, and we are all in full understanding of each other and why we're here and what we're trying to learn. But then we come down here to earth, and it's like this human experience is quite different than the spiritual experience. Because we come down here not even remembering who we are, where we're from, or why we're here. We just get thrown into the experience of it all with nothing but our free will to respond. So I believe in you. I believe in your ability to be brave and courageous because you're human. If you're human, you're already brave and courageous just for being here in this earthly schoolroom. So it would please the Lord, your own I am, for you to heal from your childhood trauma by connecting with your own personal responsibility, by finding stillness and balance within your thoughts and feelings, and by offering forgiveness to all the other brave souls that decide to come here and teach you something. Well, that about wraps it up for this video. So if you like this video, be sure to click that like button and share this video with all your friends out there. And of course, if you're a viewer but not yet a subscriber, I would just love for you to click subscribe down below. And once you have subscribed, you can turn on the notifications bell if you would like to be notified each and every time I upload a new video. Thank you guys so much for watching and spending your time with me. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Bye.